The morning my father told me I was too expensive to save, I was lying in a hospital bed with tubes running through my arms, 19 years old and terrified. He stood in the doorway of room 314 at Denver General, my mother behind him wringing her hands, and he said the words that would haunt me for the next 5 years. "Cancer treatment costs more than you're worth to this family, Colton. We're done here." I remember the exact time. 7:43 a.m. The breakfast tray was still untouched on my bedside table, scrambled eggs going cold. My brother Preston stood by the window, checking his phone like this was just another business meeting he had to get through. Dad held a manila folder thick with medical bills, waving it like evidence in a courtroom. 300,000 minimum, he continued, his voice as flat as if he was discussing a car repair estimate at his shop. That's before complications. Before the experimental treatments if the first round fails. We'll lose the house, the business, everything Preston has worked for, your mother's retirement. For what? A 60% chance you survive? My mother, Judith, the woman who used to check my forehead for fevers and make me chicken soup when I had the flu, just nodded along. She wouldn't look at me. Not once. "Mom?" I managed to say through cracked lips. The chemo had already started destroying my throat. "You're really going to leave me here alone?" She turned toward the wall. "Your father's right. We have to think about the family's future." Preston finally looked up from his phone. "It's just math, Colt. 1 life versus 3. Sometimes you have to make hard choices." They walked out that morning and never came back. Changed their numbers that same day, moved without telling me where, even convinced my girlfriend Meredith that staying with me would ruin her life too. In the span of 3 hours, I went from having a family to having absolutely no one. Last week, 5 years after that morning, a lawyer in an Armani suit knocked on my apartment door. Harrison Aldrich, he said his name was, from some downtown firm I couldn't afford to walk past. He had this smile, gentle but knowing, and he held a leather briefcase that probably cost more than my monthly rent. "Colton Ryder?" he asked, and when I nodded, suspicious this was about some medical debt I'd missed, he said something that made my knees buckle. "I'm here about a $63 million inheritance left specifically to you." I laughed. Actually laughed, because what else do you do when life plays jokes that cruel? But Harrison wasn't laughing. He pulled out document after document, official seals, and signatures covering papers I could barely process. "The donor," he said, still with that gentle smile, "specifically requested I deliver their final message to you personally. They wanted you to know that Samuel Haversham, the night janitor who cleaned your hospital room during your treatments, never forgot the boy who was abandoned but refused to give up. The boy everyone said was too expensive to save. Sam. The quiet old man who mopped my floor at midnight and snuck me crackers when I couldn't afford dinner. The janitor who sat with me during the worst chemo nights when the pain made me want to die. He was worth $63 million, and he left every penny to me, the kid whose own father calculated my life on a calculator app and decided I wasn't worth the investment. But I'm getting ahead of myself. To understand why a hospital janitor left me millions, you need to understand what happened in those 5 years between abandonment and inheritance. You need to know what it's like to survive cancer alone at 19, to work 3 jobs while poisoning your body with chemotherapy, to prove you're worth saving when everyone who should love you has decided you're not. My name is Colton Ryder. I'm 24 years old. 5 years ago, my family abandoned me in a hospital bed because cancer made me too expensive. Last week, I became a multimillionaire because a stranger saw my worth when my own blood couldn't. This is that story. Life at 19 wasn't supposed to be complicated. I had it all figured out, or at least I thought I did. Monday through Friday, I worked as an apprentice carpenter with Brennan Construction, learning how to frame houses and install custom cabinets. My hands were getting rough and skilled, covered in calluses I wore like badges of honor. My boss, Rick Brennan, said I had natural talent, that I could run my own crew by 25 if I kept working hard, Weekends belonged to Meredith, my girlfriend since junior year of high school. We'd drive up to the mountains in my beat-up Ford Ranger, find hidden trails, and talk about our future. She was studying to become a nurse at the community college while I saved money for trade school. We had this whole plan mapped out. Get married at 23, buy a fixer-upper house that I'd renovate myself, have kids by 27. Simple dreams, but they were ours. Every Friday night, without fail, I'd show up at my parents' house on Maple Street for dinner. The same brick ranch house where I'd grown up, where my height marks still climbed the kitchen doorframe, and my Little League trophies gathered dust in the living room. Mom would make her famous pot roast with those little red potatoes that fell apart on your fork. The smell would hit you the moment you walked in, mixing with the pine sol she used to clean and the WD-40 that followed Dad home from his auto shop. "Colton's here," Mom would call out, even though everyone already knew. My brother Preston would arrive 15 minutes later, always 15 minutes, like he'd calculated the exact amount of time that showed he was busy but not disrespectful. He'd swagger in wearing his real estate agent uniform, a suit that cost more than I made in a month, talking about his latest commission or some development deal that was going to make him rich. "Little brother's still playing with wood?" Preston would joke, ruffling my hair like I was still 12. "You know I could get you a real job, right? Wearing a tie, making actual money." "Someone's got to build the houses you sell," I'd shoot back, and Dad would chuckle from his recliner, beer in hand. Dad, Vernon Ryder, was a simple man with oil-stained fingers and strong opinions about hard work. He'd built his auto repair shop from nothing, starting in our garage when I was 5 and expanding to a proper shop with 3 bays and 2 employees by the time I hit high school. He believed in earning your keep, paying your debts, and never taking handouts. "A man's worth is in his work," he'd say, the same phrase repeated so often it became family gospel. Mom worked as a retail manager at Davidson's department store downtown, 30 years of perfect attendance, and not a single sick day she was proud to mention. Judith Ryder believed in security above all else. Steady paychecks, good insurance, retirement funds. She had spreadsheets for household budgets dating back to 1995, every expense tracked and categorized. "Plan for the worst, hope for the best," she'd tell us, usually while updating her color-coded financial binders. The headaches started in March, right around my 19th birthday. Just pressure behind my eyes at first, the kind you get from staring at blueprints too long or breathing in too much sawdust. I popped Advil like candy and kept working. Rick noticed me wincing one day while operating the table saw. "You all right, kid?" he asked, shutting off the machine. "Just a headache," I said, already reaching to restart the saw. But they got worse. Sharp, stabbing pains that made me see stars. Nausea that hit out of nowhere. I'd have to sit down in the middle of carrying lumber, gripping my head while the world spun. Meredith begged me to see a doctor, but I had my father's stubbornness about medical care. Waste of money for someone to tell me to rest and drink water, I'd insist. Then came April 15th. Tax day, ironically enough, considering how that date would eventually factor into my life's accounting. I was installing crown molding in a custom home, up on a ladder with my nail gun, when the world went black. Rick said I fell 8 feet straight down like someone had cut my strings. The nail gun fired when I hit the ground, missing my leg by inches. I woke up in Denver General Hospital with Dr. Patricia Knowles standing over me, her face carefully composed in that way doctors perfect when they have bad news. Mom sat in the chair beside me. Dad stood by the window, and Preston leaned against the doorframe like he was already planning his exit. "Colton," Dr. Knowles began, "your CT scan showed abnormalities in your lymph nodes. We ran additional tests. I'm afraid you have stage 2 Hodgkin's lymphoma." Cancer. The word hung in the sterile air between us, heavy as lead. Mom's hand found mine, squeezing so tight I could feel her wedding ring digging into my palm. Dad's expression never changed, but I watched him pull out his phone, fingers already moving toward the calculator app. The first 3 weeks of treatment gave me hope. The chemotherapy was brutal, sure, but I could handle it. The nurses at Denver General knew me by name, brought me extra blankets, and taught me tricks to manage the nausea. I'd have FaceTime with Meredith between her classes, and she'd show me her notes from nursing school, explaining what each medication did to my body. Mom visited every morning before her shift at Davidson's, bringing homemade muffins I couldn't keep down but appreciated anyway. Even Preston stopped by twice, awkwardly patting my shoulder and leaving sports magazines he'd grabbed from the hospital gift shop. But something was changing at home. I could feel it in the way Dad's visits grew shorter, how he spent more time in the hallway on phone calls than in my room. Mom's smiles became forced. Her eyes red-rimmed not from crying about my diagnosis, but from what looked like arguments. Preston stopped coming altogether after the second week. Then came May 8th, a Wednesday morning that started with unusual activity. I woke to find my entire family in my hospital room before 7 a.m. Dad held a manila folder thick with papers. Mom stood behind him, her face turned toward the window. Preston sat in the visitor's chair, scrolling through his phone with determined focus. "We need to talk, son," Dad began, and his tone was the same one he used when firing employees at the shop. He opened the folder, spreading papers across my hospital tray table. Medical bills, insurance statements, payment plan options, everything highlighted and annotated in his precise handwriting. "I've been going through the numbers with our insurance company and the hospital billing department. Your treatment, even with our insurance covering 70%, will cost us approximately $300,000. That's if everything goes perfectly. No complications, no additional rounds, no experimental treatments." I watched him pull out his phone, opening the calculator app he'd been living in for weeks. "The house is worth $420. We owe $200 on the mortgage. The shop barely breaks even most months. Your mother's retirement account has $80,000. Preston's wedding is set for next year. Already deposits paid." "Dad, we can figure this out," I said, my voice rough from the tube they'd put down my throat during yesterday's procedure. "I can work when I'm better. Payment plans exist for a reason." Vernon shook his head. "You don't understand, Colton. This isn't just about money. It's about survival, the family's survival." He set down his phone, looking me directly in the eyes for the first time that morning. "Your survival rate at stage 2 is 60%. That means there's a 40% chance we destroy everything 3 generations of writers built for nothing." "For nothing?" The words hit harder than any chemotherapy side effect. "I'm your son." "And Preston's my son too," Dad shot back. "Your mother's my wife. I have to think about everyone, not just you." Mom finally turned from the window, tears streaming down her face but her voice steady. "We've made our decision, Colton. We can't risk everything. You're young. If the treatments don't work, we'll have lost everything. The house, the business, Preston's future, our retirement. We'll be on the street at 50. Preston finally looked up from his phone. "It's basic economics, Colt. The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. I've got 3 development deals lined up that could set me up for life, but not if I have to liquidate everything to help with medical debt." "You're abandoning me," I said, the reality settling in like ice in my veins. "You're actually choosing money over my life." "We're choosing the family's survival over a 60% gamble," Vernon corrected, his voice maddeningly calm. "You're too expensive to save, son. The math doesn't work." Those words would echo in my head for years. Too expensive to save. Like I was a broken transmission at his shop, not worth the cost of parts and labor. "What about love?" I asked, desperate now. "What about family sticking together? What about all those dinners where you said family comes first?" "This is putting family first," Dad said, already packing up his papers. "The family that has the best chance of survival. We're done here, Colton. We won't be coming back. Don't try to contact us. We're changing our numbers and we'll be moving within the month. Preston's found us a place in Castle Rock. Your mother's already transferred to a different Davidson's location." Mom approached my bed one last time, leaning down like she might kiss my forehead. Instead, she whispered, "I'm sorry you got sick, but we can't let you drag us all down with you. Sometimes love means letting go." They filed out of my room in a line. Dad first, folder tucked under his arm. Mom behind him, never looking back. Preston last, pausing at the door just long enough to say, "For what it's worth, I hope you beat it. Just do it without us." The door clicked shut and I was alone. Completely, utterly alone, with poison dripping into my veins and machines beeping around me, abandoned by the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally. The first 24 hours after they left, I wanted to die. Not from the cancer, but from the abandonment. I lay in that hospital bed staring at the ceiling tiles, counting them over and over because it was easier than thinking about how my father had calculated my worth on a calculator app and found me lacking. The nurses knew something had happened. They whispered in the hallways, brought me extra juice boxes, and checked on me more frequently than medical protocol required. Then Beatrice Washington walked into my room. She was a hospital social worker, 62 years old, with silver braids wrapped in a crown around her head and glasses that magnified her brown eyes. She pulled a chair right up to my bed, close enough that I could smell her lavender hand lotion, and said the words that saved my life. "Honey, I heard what happened. Now you can lay here and let those bastards be right, or you can get up and prove that some things can't be calculated in dollars and cents." "They're not coming back," I told her, my voice hollow. "Good," Beatrice said, surprising me. "Now you don't have to waste energy on people who don't deserve you. Let's talk about what you're going to do instead." She opened a binder thicker than my father's folder of bills, but instead of reasons to give up, it was full of solutions. Charity care applications, payment plan options, foundations that helped young cancer patients, part-time jobs I could do from a hospital bed. The hospital has a financial assistance program that can cover up to 60% of your bills if you qualify, and honey, you qualify. The rest we'll figure out payment plans for. $20 a month if that's all you can manage. They want their money, but they want it from living patients who can actually pay something, not dead ones who can't pay anything. "Why do you care?" I asked her. "Because 30 years ago, I was diagnosed with breast cancer," she said, rolling up her sleeve to show me a small tattoo of a phoenix on her wrist. "My husband left me too, said he didn't sign up to be a nurse. But you know what? I'm still here, and he's on his third divorce. The best revenge isn't dying to prove them right, it's living to prove them wrong." That night, Beatrice brought me a laptop from the lost and found and helped me set up a plan. I would fight the cancer with everything I had, but I would also fight the debt. Every day between treatments I would work. Data entry jobs I could do from bed paid $15 an hour. Medical transcription paid $18. Online tutoring for high school kids in math and basic carpentry skills paid $20. "But first," Beatrice said, "you need a reason bigger than spite to survive." She was right. Spite could start the engine, but it couldn't fuel the whole journey. I found my reason the next day when Timothy, a 7-year-old with leukemia, was moved into the room next door. His parents lived 3 hours away and could only visit weekends because they couldn't afford to miss work. I watched him eat dinner alone, coloring superhero books while attached to an IV pole. I wheeled my IV pole over and asked if he wanted company. We spent 3 hours that night building a tower out of medicine cups and tongue depressors. When it finally fell over, his laugh filled the entire ward. That's when I knew I would survive this to help kids like Timothy, kids whose families couldn't or wouldn't be there. The chemotherapy got worse before it got better. 6 months stretched to 8, then 10. My hair fell out in clumps. My weight dropped from 180 to 115 pounds. Some days the nausea was so bad I could only work for an hour before passing out, but I kept going. Between treatments, I stocked shelves at a 24-hour grocery store, using my IV pole as a makeshift cane. I delivered newspapers at 4 a.m. because the cool morning air helped with the chemo sweats. I did data entry until my eyes burned and my fingers cramped. Sam, the night janitor, became my silent companion. He'd mop my room around midnight, always taking extra time, sometimes sitting in the visitor's chair during his break. He rarely spoke beyond a mumbled greeting, but he'd leave crackers on my nightstand when he noticed I'd missed dinner because of work. Once, I woke up to find he'd fixed my laptop charger with electrical tape and a paper clip. "You're a fighter," he said one night, the longest sentence I'd heard from him. That's rare these days. Meredith tried calling once, 3 months after my family left. I answered, desperate for connection. "Colton, your dad came to my parents. He said staying with you would ruin my future, that I'd spend my 20s paying your medical debt instead of living my life. He made sense." "Do you love me?" I asked. "Love doesn't pay bills," she said, echoing my father's practical cruelty. "I'm sorry, but I have to think about my future." After that call, I taped a note to my bathroom mirror. "You are worth saving." Every morning, after vomiting from the chemotherapy, I'd read it aloud. Some days, I didn't believe it. But I said it anyway because Timothy needed someone to build towers with, and Beatrice believed in me. And somewhere out there, I had to prove that my worth couldn't be calculated in dollars. 5 years passed like that. 5 years of 16-hour workdays, ramen dinners, and walking everywhere to save gas money. The cancer went into remission after 14 months of treatment, but the debt remained. $200,000, even after charity care and negotiated reductions. I moved into a studio apartment above a Chinese restaurant, where the smell of sesame oil became my permanent cologne, and the thin walls meant I learned Mandarin curse words from my neighbors' late-night phone calls. Last Tuesday started like every other day. 5 a.m. newspaper delivery route, 8 a.m. warehouse shift, 2 p.m. food delivery gig. Come in. I assure you, this is legitimate and very much concerns you." Something in his tone made me step aside. Harrison entered my studio, his expensive shoes clicking on the warped linoleum. He glanced around the space, taking in my air mattress in the corner, the card table that served as my desk, the 3 shirts hanging from a rope I'd strung across the window. No judgment in his expression, just observation. He set his briefcase on my card table and pulled out a stack of documents. "Mr. Ryder, a donor who wishes to remain anonymous until you've heard everything has left you their entire estate." "This is a scam," I said immediately. "I don't know anyone with money. The richest person I know is my brother, and he wouldn't give me $1 if I was starving." Harrison smiled gently, the kind of smile that suggested he knew more than he was saying. "The estate is valued at $63 million. My legs gave out. I collapsed into my folding chair, the metal creaking under the sudden weight. 63 million? That's impossible. Who would leave me anything, let alone that much? Before I reveal the donor's identity, they wanted me to share their story. Harrison pulled out a handwritten letter, the script shaky but determined. The donor was born in 1951 in rural Nebraska. Dropped out of high school to support his family. Worked as a janitor for 40 years while tinkering with electronics in his garage at night. He held 17 patents for medical devices, particularly in the field of chemotherapy delivery systems. His inventions have saved thousands of lives and generated hundreds of millions in licensing fees. My hands started shaking. "Sam?" Harrison nodded. "Samuel Haversham. He cleaned your hospital room during your treatments." Sam was a millionaire? The words felt impossible. Sam, who wore the same gray uniform every night, who ate vending machine sandwiches for dinner, who mumbled about circuit boards while mopping floors. Mr. Haversham lived simply by choice, Harrison explained. He had no family, no children. He spent 40 years watching patients fight for their lives, but you caught his attention. He said he'd never seen anyone fight harder while having less support. He would sit in your room during his breaks, watching you work on your laptop even when you could barely stay conscious. Harrison pulled out another document. He left very specific instructions. The entire estate goes to you, but with one condition. You must use a portion to establish a foundation for abandoned medical patients. He wrote, and I quote, "Colton Ryder was deemed too expensive to save by those who should have loved him most. He proved that the value of a human life cannot be calculated in dollars. This money will ensure no patient fights alone again." Tears were streaming down my face now, and I didn't try to stop them. He sat with me. During the worst nights, when I was vomiting blood and wanted to die, he'd just sit there. Never said much, just sat there so I wasn't alone. "There's more," Harrison said softly. "Mr. Haversham kept a journal. He wrote about you often." He handed me a worn notebook. I opened it to a random page, Sam's shaky handwriting filling the lines. The boy worked on his computer until 3 a.m., even though he'd had chemo 6 hours earlier. His family hasn't visited in 4 months. He doesn't know I increased the morphine dose slightly when the pain got too bad. He doesn't know I paid for his antibiotics when his insurance refused to cover them. He doesn't know his worth, but I do. It's immeasurable. "When did he die?" I asked, my voice breaking. 2 weeks ago, pancreatic cancer. He refused treatment, said he'd lived enough and wanted his money to go toward life, not prolonging death. His final words were about you. He said, "Tell Colton his father was wrong. He was worth saving. He was worth everything." I held the journal against my chest, sobbing for the quiet janitor who saw my worth when my own blood couldn't. The check cleared the next morning. $63 million sitting in an account with my name on it. The same name my father had signed away 5 years ago. The bank manager actually called me personally to confirm it wasn't an error, probably wondering why someone with that much money was living above a Chinese restaurant and eating ramen for dinner. My first call was to Beatrice Washington, the social worker who'd saved my life with her binder full of solutions and refusal to let me give up. She answered on the second ring, her voice warm as always. "Colton, honey, how are you?" "Beatrice, are you sitting down?" I asked. "Why? What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong. I need you to make a list of every patient in your charity care program who's struggling with medical debt. Every single one. That's over 200 people, Colton. What are you planning?" "I'm paying off all of it. Every penny of medical debt for every one of them." The silence stretched so long I thought we'd been disconnected. Then I heard her crying. "Colton, what happened? Did you rob a bank?" "No, but a janitor named Sam Haversham left me his entire estate because he believed I was worth saving when my family didn't. Now I'm going to make sure everyone else knows they're worth saving, too." Within a week, I'd established the Haversham Foundation for abandoned medical patients. The paperwork was overwhelming, but I hired Harrison Aldrich's firm to handle it. The foundation would provide financial assistance, emotional support, and practical resources for patients whose families had abandoned them due to medical costs. No one would eat vending machine dinners alone on Thanksgiving anymore. No one would have to choose between chemotherapy and keeping their apartment. Then came the phone call I'd been expecting. My brother Preston called from a number I didn't recognize. "Colton, it's me. Don't hang up." I stayed silent, letting him fill the emptiness. "We heard about your inheritance. Dad wants to talk to you. Mom's been crying all morning. We made a mistake, okay? We were scared. You have to understand, $300,000 was everything we had." "Where did you hear about it?" I asked, genuinely curious since I hadn't announced anything publicly yet. "It's all over Denver financial news. $63 million estate transferred to a 24-year-old cancer survivor. Some reporter connected the dots to you. Dad saw it at the shop this morning, and now he wants to reconcile. We're family, Colton. Family forgives. You can't hold one mistake against us forever." "One mistake?" I felt the old anger rising, but kept my voice steady. "You calculated my worth on a calculator app. Dad said I was too expensive to save. Mom said letting me go was love. You said it was basic economics. That's not one mistake, Preston. That's a fundamental failure of humanity. Vernon's voice came through next. He must have grabbed the phone. Son, we did what we thought was best for the family. We were trying to protect everyone's future. No, Dad, you were protecting your assets. There's a difference. Don't be stubborn, Colton. You have more money than you could spend in 10 lifetimes. Your mother hasn't been the same since we left. She needs to see you. We're still your blood. Samuel Haversham was my family, I said calmly. Beatrice Washington was my family. The nurses who held my hand during chemotherapy were my family. Timothy, the 7-year-old with leukemia who ate dinner with me when his parents couldn't visit, he was my family. Family doesn't calculate your worth on a spreadsheet. Family doesn't abandon you because you're expensive. Family sees your value when you're worth nothing on paper. So that's it? You're going to punish us forever? Keep all that money to yourself like some kind of revenge? I'm not keeping it, Dad. I'm giving it to strangers who need it more than you do. The Haversham Foundation will help thousands of people whose families abandoned them. People like me who were deemed too expensive to save. You're making a mistake, he said, his voice hard now, the mask slipping. We're your real family. No, you're my blood relatives. You taught me the difference. Sam Haversham, a janitor who made $17 an hour, sat with me through the worst nights of my life. You couldn't be bothered to visit after calculating I wasn't worth the investment. Who do you think earned the right to be called family? I hung up and blocked the number. Today, the Haversham Foundation has helped over 400 abandoned patients. We've paid off $12 million in medical debt, provided housing for patients undergoing treatment, and created a support network that ensures no one fights alone. I keep Sam's janitor badge on my desk, next to his journal and a photo of us together that a nurse took. One night, when she caught him teaching me how to fix my broken laptop charger. The cancer taught me about mortality, showed me how fragile life could be, but my family's abandonment taught me something more important, that love isn't measured in dollars. Family isn't defined by blood, and sometimes the quietest angels are the ones mopping hospital floors at midnight, carrying millions in their hearts while pushing mops with hands worth more than gold. If you found value in this story, please share it with someone who needs to hear that they're worth saving. Leave a comment below about the unexpected angels in your own life. And don't forget to subscribe to this channel for more stories that remind us all of our immeasurable worth.